Yes, good morning and welcome to our first session this morning. For those who missed our session yesterday, this podcast is purely meant to prepare our candidates who are preparing to take their final exams. Yesterday we went through history and government, and we shall be continuing the same today. Today I would want us to go through the structure of history and government paper 1. Of course, we did that yesterday, but just as a reminder for those who missed that beautiful moment yesterday. History and government is one of the subjects examinable and offered in our current curriculum. As a subject, history has two structures, that is paper 1 and paper 2. In the first session this morning, I will be dwelling too much on paper 1. Now, paper 1 means themes in Kenyan history. Here we basically look at the history of the people of Kenya and the governance. History has three sections. Section A tests the broader history. It cuts across all the topics you've learned right from Form 1 up to Form 4 now. It is numbered between number 1 to 17 with 8 questions carrying 2 marks each and 9 questions each having 1 mark. When you come to section B, this section is numbered between number 18 to number 21. Each question carries a total of 15 marks, numbered as part A and B. When you find a question in this section where part A of the question is 3 marks, definitely part B must be 12 marks. If it is 5 marks in part A, then you have to do 10 marks in part B, and you have to answer the questions in totality. So you have a freedom of choosing 3 questions from this section. There are a total of 4, but as a candidate, you are expected to choose 3 questions in this section. Question 18 is purely derived from the following topics, and that is what we'll be doing today. Question 18 is basically tested from 3 topics. Predominantly, this question tackles the people of Kenya up to the 19th century. That means the migration, the interaction, and the settlement of the people of Kenya up to the 19th century. You have to look at what were some of the reasons behind migration of the Kenyan communities into Kenya. What were the results of the interaction altogether? If you miss that topic, then you are likely to meet socio-economic and political organization of the Kenyan communities up to the 19th century, the very communities we have looked at under the migration. So these 2 topics, and these are topic 4 and 5 in Form 1, they are normally brought together. You may find part A of the question is about the people of Kenya in terms of migration and settlement of the results, and part B will be talking about maybe the organization in terms of social aspect, economic activities, or political aspect. If you miss these 2 topics, then prepare a question on the contact between East Africa and the outside world, as was in the case in the year 2019. In the year 2019, the council did not test the traditional topics, the people of Kenya. Instead, they chose to test something on the Indian Ocean trade, that is, in the contact between East Africa and outside world. When you come to number 19 predominantly tackles questions from the topic 1, the contact between East Africa and the outside world. If you miss that, then you prepare yourself on a question that comes from Form 3 work, that is establishment of colonial rule in Kenya. Or if you miss that as well, then you can also tackle the topic that talks about social and economic developments in Kenya in the colonial period. All together. Now, when you move to part C, that is just in a summary. I'll be giving you a detailed structure of each question and a topic where you expect that to come. But let me cut that short. Let me come to section C. Section C tackles topics that talks about the government. There is a very good reason why this subject is called history and government. And the government aspect of it is mandatory and will be there as you prepare for this year's exams that is coming in a couple of 3 months. You must prepare yourself adequately in the following areas in section C. First of all, this section has got a total of 3 questions and it is numbered between number 22 to 24. As a candidate, you are expected to answer only 2 questions from this section. Question number 22. You can get this number tested in the following areas. 1, we talk about citizenship that we tackled in Form 1. We talk about national integration. When you come to Form 2, we talk about constitution making and then democracy and human rights. Those are areas that you can meet in this number. When you come to number 23, and this number 23, I want us to be very keen here. There is this last topic in Form 3 that is the formation, structure, and functions of the government of Kenya. If you are preparing to take your exams in 3 months to come, you must, and I mean you must prepare adequately well in this topic. I would want to, let me make it look more simpler to you. This is a very wide topic, as we all know. But remember, it is sectioned. First, we talk about electoral process in Kenya. First thing, as a candidate, I want you to go into this topic and read it in this manner. First, look at the aspect of electoral process in Kenya. Look at what are the qualifications for one to be a voter. It all begins with the steps towards elections in Kenya, where we begin with civic education. After you've been sensitized and made aware on the need to participate in this election, you have to be registered as a voter, and you have to look at what are the basic qualifications for one to be registered as a voter in Kenya. It all goes down to nomination of candidates, which takes place in 2 forms. We have the party primaries, where the political parties will have to nominate those they would wish to be their flag bearers in all the 6 elective seats. And then comes the IEBC nomination, which is now the formal nomination, where the aspirants, those that are aspiring to vie in various elective seats, are now declared officially to vie. They cease being aspirants, and then they become the candidates. From there, we move on to campaigns. After campaigns, which closes almost 12 hours to the polling, we come to the polling. Now, on the actual polling day, you are likely to get to the polling station and then you are denied a chance to vote. When you are a registered voter, you have to note what the circumstances under which a registered voter may be denied right to vote in the Kenyan elections. For example, when one is time-barred, one is late. The polls opens at 6 a.m. in the morning and closes at exactly 6 in the evening. When you present yourself to a polling station later than 6 p.m., you will be turned away. If one is found to have been registered twice, you will be automatically disqualified from voting. What was your intention? If one decides to present himself in a constituency or a polling station is not registered, you will not cast your vote, or you've been declared of unsound mind. In the course of time, things have happened that no one may comprehend, and you lose your sanity and you become a certified lunatic. You are disqualified. So you have to look at all these 6 elective seats. We begin with the election for the member of the county assembly. We move to election for the women member of National Assembly, or you can put it basically as election for women representatives. Then we move to elections for the senators, election for the members of the constituency, election for the governors, and election for the president. From there, we have to look at the qualifications to these various elective seats. You have to know that these 6 elective seats, they have minimum requirement for one to be cleared to vie. But today I want to tell you that there are 5 basic requirements that cuts across all the 6 elective seats. So don't go too far reading all those things you have to move to for one to be elected an MCA. You want to find what are the basic. There are 5 minimum requirements that cuts across all these elective seats. 1, for you to be elected in all these 6 elective seats, one must be a registered voter. You cannot present yourself to be an elected leader when you personally, you have not done the basic patriotic responsibility that this nation requires you to do, to be a registered voter. So one must be a registered voter in all those 6 elective seats. If you are to discuss about qualification for one to be elected a member of the county assembly, for example, we would say one must be a registered voter in the ward you'd wish to vie. If he's a member of parliament, one must be a registered voter in the constituency you'd wish to vie. Same applies to the governor or senator, must be a registered voter in the county you'd wish to vie. Secondly, one must be nominated by a political party or as an independent candidate. And you have to know what are some of the importance of people vying for these elective seats under party ticket. You have to be a registered, one must be nominated by a political party or as an independent candidate. Thirdly, one must not be a public officer. One is not a public office holder. So if you want to present yourself for election and you occupy these government offices, the law requires you that you resign 3 months prior to elections. So one is not public officer. One must satisfy Chapter 6 of the Constitution. What does Chapter 6 of the Constitution talks about? The integrity. You must have not been convicted of corruption, voter bribery and all that. So one must satisfy Chapter 6 of the Constitution. One is not declared bankrupt by a court of law. That is a qualification that for you to vie, you have not been at any point declared bankrupt by a court of law. One is not declared of unsound mind. We do not allow lunatics to partake in our elections. And finally, one must meet the prescribed educational requirements. I would want you to put that point in that manner. One must meet the prescribed educational requirements. The reason why I insist you put this in this manner is there has been a lot of debate in this country going around whether we should tie your educational qualifications to these elective seats. Like, look at the High Court ruling some years back in this country that declared Constitution does not necessarily require one to have a degree, for example, to be elected a governor. So each and every elective seat has got a minimum educational qualification, but we can agree as a team that one of the qualifications, you must meet prescribed educational requirements. So let us generalize this point in that manner. Once you're done with that, look at what are now some of the reasons that may disqualify one being elected in a given elective seat, like in the KCSE of 2018, where the candidates were asked to explain reasons that may disqualify one from being elected member of the county assembly. It is very simple. If one is declared bankrupt, we cannot trust with public office, with public resources. If one is of unsound mind, like I said before, we don't allow lunatics to partake in our elections. If one is a public officer, you cannot have 2 jobs at the same time. It is one man, one job. I think that is the debate that is now running this country. If one is not a registered voter, you're disqualified. You look at back in 2013 when we lost the senator for Makueni, the late Mutula Kilonzo. The CORD coalition at that time nominated the daughter of the late, that was Kathy Kilonzo. But soon IEBC disqualified her on the basis that she was not a registered voter in Kenya. So one must be a registered voter. There are so many reasons that may disqualify one from being elected in those elective seats, but those 5 are minimum. Once you have dug through that, move on to look at the roles of the IEBC. The last time that was set was in the KCSE of 2009, so you have to check on that. Then move on to look at what are the factors that are likely to interfere with the free and fair elections. We're living in a country where in every election cycle, we must have people contesting the results, that the election was not done free and fair. So what are some of the factors that interferes with the free and fair elections? But we can have a bare minimum responses to this. That one, look at during election cycle, there are a lot of violence. So one will talk about election violence that may deny potential voters from accessing polling stations that already interfered with their political right to vote. Election violence during elections that may prevent potential voters from accessing polling stations. We have gone high-tech. We're using what I call biometric voter identifications, the BVR kits. Failure of the BVR kits may derail the process or may make some potential voters be turned away. You are turned away because you cannot be identified. Alphanumeric search in the KIMS kit. They do the manual. So those are factors. That is one of those factors, failure of the BVR kits. Thirdly, we'll talk about corruption. That is the elephant in the house. Corruption practices among the IEBC officials and the various candidates may compromise the process. Incompetence is another thing. Incompetency of election officials who may mismanage the process. How can this happen? When you are incompetent, it means you do not have the necessary skills to manage something. What is the most likely outcome? Something that is not credible. So incompetent election officials who are likely to mismanage the process. We have seen in this kind of elections where there are some polling stations where people begin voting in midday. What may be as a result? What may bring this? We talk about unfavorable weather conditions like heavy rains in the morning that may make potential voters be unable to access polling stations. So unfavorable weather conditions such as rains may make polling stations inaccessible. Those 5. Talk about rigging of elections. And what is this thing called rigging of election? Rigging election is a situation where a wrong candidate is declared a winner. So rigging elections may put the process in question. So rigging of elections may lead to wrong results, where wrong candidates are declared winners. So weed through this electoral process, then move to the structure, the organs of the national government. We begin with the judiciary. Under the judiciary, we move on to the executive and legislature. Let us begin with the legislature. Under the legislature, I want you to look at the following aspect. First of all, let us see what are the composition of the of our legislature. We have a bicameral legislature made up of 2 houses, that is the National Assembly and the Senate. Let us take each separately. What are the composition of the National Assembly? The National Assembly is made up of 1, elected members, nominated members, and Speaker as an ex-official. You go to the Senate, you do the same. The composition of the Senate. We have nominated members there. We have elected members there. And the Speaker as an ex-official. Do not try to be precise where you now want to give the exact number. Sijui 290 elected members. What if we have increased the number of constituencies overnight? Let us have them at that. Then the next thing with these 2 houses, let us look at functions of each. Functions of the National Assembly, KCSE 2021. Function of the Senate has never been set by the NEC. And you have to know that the main role of the Senate is to protect the interest of the counties and county governments in this country. That is the sole reason why we have the Senate, to protect the interest of the counties and their governments. Then let us move on to this office in the National Assembly, the Speaker. KCSE 2010. It is a very long time. Let us look at the roles of the Speaker. Having done that, let us come now to this concept of parliamentary supremacy. In what ways do we guarantee parliamentary supremacy in this country? And what do we mean by the phrase parliamentary supremacy? Parliamentary supremacy means Parliament is the supreme organ of the land, that it has been empowered by the Constitution to perform certain functions that not even the executive, not even the judiciary can do. And we all know that the lawmaking process in Kenya, that is a reserve. There is no any other arm of government in this country that has been empowered by the Constitution in making law. So we have to look at ways in which parliamentary supremacy is upheld in Kenya. Like one, it is the only body that makes and amends laws. There is no any other body in this country. It is the only body that approves government revenue and expenditure. In other words, when you are asked about upholding parliamentary supremacy, let us go back to the roles of National Assembly. Let us look at those roles that no any other organ can do in this country except Parliament. Like one, the lawmaking, approving the government revenue and expenditure. The Parliament has power to pass a vote of no confidence on the entire executive. There is no such organ again. It is the only body in this country that approves all presidential appointees. That makes it supreme, that even the executive is subject to its approval. So you have to look at all that. But despite having such supreme roles, we have a situation where such supremacy may be put to test. In this case, what are some of the factors limiting this supremacy? So you ask, explain 5 ways in which, or explain 5 factors limiting parliamentary supremacy in Kenya. What will you say? In this case, while we all know Parliament has got the authority to make and amend laws, Parliament cannot pass laws that contradict the international law. So, in its mandate of making laws, it has already been confined to a certain level, that it cannot pass laws that contradicts the international law, because Kenya is part of the international community, those who signed the Charter of the United Nations Organization. Parliament cannot pass laws that contradicts people's beliefs and customs, unless people want change. Parliament cannot pass laws that contradicts the Constitution. It is very clear. 4, a powerful executive may influence decisions made by Parliament. Like in this country, we are traversing a rough ocean where we have leaders who want to be imperial, where we have an executive that is so powerful. They may influence decisions made by the members of Parliament. Another factor that may limit this, as you all know, county governments may pass certain laws without consulting Parliament, because at the county level we also have the county assembly that passes laws that governs our county governments. So they may sometimes pass certain laws that may also affect national laws without consulting the National Assembly as well. So those are the areas that I would want you to look at. Then look at something about Parliamentary Service Commission. And then come to the executive. Let us begin with the composition of the executive. Let us look at the roles of the executive. Then let us come to one of the composition of the executive, the cabinet. What is the composition of the cabinet? A cabinet is made up of the president, and where there is a president, there must be a deputy president. And then we have the cabinet secretaries. What are the roles of the cabinet? Then move to the security organs. Let us look at functions of the police, KCSE 2021. What about the correctional services, the former prison department? The Kenya Defense Forces, what are the organs of the Kenya Defense Forces? And in general, what are the challenges that are facing these security organs? And what are the possible solutions to this problem? So we have to look at them in that manner. Then come to the judiciary, composition of the judiciary. The judiciary, as we all know, is made of a hierarchy of both superior courts and subordinate courts. Are you able to highlight the superior courts we have in this country? What about the subordinate courts? So you have to look at it at that level. And then each and every court you begin with the Supreme Court, or the members, the composition of the Supreme Court. What are the roles of the Supreme Court? Same to Court of Appeal, High Court. Look at the KCSE of 2023. Candidates were put to task to explain functions of the High Court. You move down up to the magistrate courts. Then there is this concept of the Judicial Service Commission. Members of the Judicial Service Commission, as we all know, there must be Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, one Supreme Court judge, one Court of Appeal judge, one High Court judge, one Magistrate Court judge, Attorney General, two people representing the public, a man and a woman. So you have to look at them in that manner. And then just like we have done with the legislature, we also have to look at ways in which the independence of the judiciary is upheld in Kenya. And what are the factors that limit the independence of the judiciary? Let me begin with the factors limiting the independence of the judiciary, because we must also talk about challenges facing the judiciary. Those challenges facing the judiciary are the factors that may limit its independence, because when you talk about inadequate funding to the judiciary frustrates its ability to implement some of its program. That has already interfered with its independence, because it will now be forced to beg for more funding from the side of the executive. When you talk about, for example, use of outdated colonial laws that may lead to miscarriage of justice, they may not address the current situation. So those factors that may limit the administration of justice, or in other words, those challenges facing the judiciary, are as well as the factors limiting its independence. Then you can now go to check, how do we guarantee its independence? One, it is established by the Constitution as an arm of government. And no one can abolish that. Secondly, judiciary withdraws its expenses from the consolidated judiciary fund. It does not rely on the executive to do funding. Funding comes directly from the consolidated fund, in this case, the judiciary consolidated fund. Salaries of judges are not subjected to debate in National Assembly. In other words, salaries of judges cannot be varied in a manner to disadvantage them. Appointment of judges is done independently by the Judicial Service Commission. They are not political appointees. So that helps in safeguarding its independence. A judge of a superior court cannot be fired without a tribunal. So a judge of a superior court can only be removed from office by a tribunal. Even the president has no power to fire a judge in this country. Even the chief justice. If we have to remove a judge based on maybe gross misconduct or incompetence, there must be a tribunal formed that investigates the alleged misconduct. After which, if he is found guilty, is removed from office. The office of a superior judge cannot be abolished. Or in other words, we say, judges of superior courts enjoy security tenure of office. Judges of superior courts enjoy security tenure of office. What does that one mean? It means that no one can abolish The office of a superior judge, if there is a substantive office holder. So I want you to look at this topic in that manner. Once you're done, you are set to go. And I'm telling you, this is the topic that we must all prepare for. Formation, structure, and functions of the government of Kenya. We have to, because I like the precedents that the NEC has set for the last 3 to 4 years. This topic, for the last 4 years, in section C, has been awarded 30 marks. It means candidates have not been given an opportunity to escape answering a question from this topic. Since 2021, NEC has been setting 2 questions from this topic in section C, each 15 marks, a total of 30. Remember that in section A, there are also few questions from the same topic. So in other words, for the last 3 years, we've been having over 30 marks from this topic in KCSE. So I want us to prepare adequately in this topic. Then come to question 24. Devolve government. You have to check the devolution. Stroke. Public revenue and expenditure. You have to check on that. So basically, that is just an overview of history and government, paper 1. Now let us come to question 18. I said that this morning, this podcast will be purely based on question 18. In the school where I teach, question 18 is compulsory to everyone. I made it compulsory, even though it is an optional question. But to me, it is a compulsory question. And if you really want to be doomed, I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but miss to attempt question 18 only if you're very sure that you will score 45 out of 45 in the remaining 3 questions that you have chosen, because no candidate in this country can convince me that you cannot outline reasons for the migration of the Kenyan communities. So in question 18, I will be beginning with chapter 4 in Form 1, the people of Kenya up to the 19th century. First, I will begin with the reasons for the migration of the Kenyan communities. As we all know, in this topic, we are discussing 3 major linguistic groups in Kenya: the Bantu, the Nilotes, and the Kushites. Each linguistic group has got subdivisions. And as a candidate, you are expected to know, why? What were the reasons behind the migration of the River Lake Nilotes into Kenya? What about the Eastern Kushites? What about the Highland Nilotes? What about the coastal Bantu? Now today, I want to make it very simple for you that there are 6 basic reasons why all Kenyan communities migrated into this country, and outline and have at the back of your mind these 6 reasons. They cut across all the 3 linguistic groups. 1, these communities migrated due to population pressure in their cradle land. You may think that that's a very simple answer, but I want to tell you there are candidates who will miss it, because some will talk about population increase in the cradle. How is that necessitating their migration? You know, population growth can be both positive and negative. But when it gets to a point where it is straining the land resources, it becomes a problem. And some people may be forced to move out to look for a source of livelihood elsewhere. So we talk about population pressure and not population increase in their cradle land. 2, due to outbreak of diseases, stroke epidemics, both for human and livestock. Due to internal conflicts in their cradle land, or family feuds, clan disputes, stroke that. Due to external attacks from their neighbors in their cradle land, or external aggression, in order to satisfy their spirit of adventure. Basically, most of them migrated because they wanted to satisfy their love for adventure. Due to outbreak of, or maybe let us put it simple like this way, due to drought, stroke famine, because what is the aftermath of drought? Famine. And what brings famine? Drought or natural calamity. So the 3 points stroke, because they mean the same thing. Due to outbreak of drought, stroke famine, stroke natural calamities, because drought is a natural calamity that brings famine and other things. So those are the basic reasons as to why any community, as we all believe that we all migrated here, we did so due to those reasons. There is another reason as to why Kenyan communities migrated, which is tailored depending on the economic activity that each community participated in. Like we'd say, there are those that migrated in search of pasture and water for their livestock. But not all communities migrated for that. There are those that migrated in search of fertile land for cultivation. Not all communities practiced cultivation as their main economic activity. So I have left it out intentionally. But let us stick with the first 5, because that will now be tailored to a given community. Once we have looked at all those reasons, you have now to ask yourself some basic questions, because a serious examiner may now want to confuse you and may not just ask you directly, maybe state 5 reasons why the Mijikenda migrated into Kenya. Maybe they may now ask you, state 5 natural factors that were responsible for the migration of the Luo into Kenya. Look at all those reasons that I've outlined. Which ones are natural? Things like outbreak of diseases, stroke epidemic. That is an environmental factor. And we talk about natural factors, we talk about environmental factor, things that are induced by the environment that we have no control over. Outbreak of droughts, stroke natural calamities, that is induced by the environment. Or you are asked about social reasons that facilitated or led to migration of a given community. We'll talk about need to satisfy their spirit of adventure. That is social. We'll talk about things like family, internal conflicts. Conflicts is both social and political. In this case, talk about internal conflicts. That is social. And then we can also talk about political. In all those reasons I've outlined, external attacks, those are now political things. So you have again to look at it in that perspective should the council decides to narrow it down in that manner. Then let us now come to results of the migration and the settlement of the Kenyan community. The question will be specific to a given linguistic group or a community. But in this podcast, I want us now to agree that there were 6 basic results that all these communities, remember it is as a result of the interaction. So this question is tested in the following ways. The following wording. 1, you are asked, explain 5 results of the migration and settlement of blah, blah, blah. Maybe the Luo into Kenya. Or, explain 6 effects or 6 results of the expansion of the Abaluya into Western Kenya. Or, explain 5 results of the interaction of the Abagusi and the Luo in Kenya during the pre-colonial period. They mean basically the same. Or you are put to task now specific. Explain social results or effects of the migration and the settlement of the Eastern Bantu into Kenya. Well, you have to note that out of those many results you learned in Form 1, majority of them are social reasons. And in this podcast, the first 5 results I will be outlining are social results to take care of the social reasons. The rest will be political, economic, like that. 1, whichever the community you've been put to task to explain its results for the migration into Kenya. 1, it led to population increase in the regions where they settled. Led to population increase in the areas where they settled. If they came in a batch of 200 and they found 100 already living here in Kenya, the number rose to 300. Population increase. 2. Led to intermarriages with the neighboring communities. They intermarried. Led to increased conflicts or warfare over land resources. They fought each other. You're asked, give 3 reasons why Kenyan communities fought each other during the pre-colonial period. Some fought to demonstrate their military power. Some fought over grazing fields. Some fought over watering points, over land resources. Led to assimilation stroke absorption of weaker communities they found in the regions they settled. Led to cultural exchange. Do not tell me led to cultural interaction. Cultural exchange with their neighbors in the areas where they settled through word borrowing, etc. For example, go to the Gusii Highland. There is this common naming called Ondieki. Traditionally, Ondieki is from the word Ondiek. Ondiek is a Luo, a Dhuluo word, meaning a hyena. But how did the Abagusi adopt such a name? It is due to their interaction with the Luo. Go to the Luya land. There is this common name, Ojiambo. Ojiambo is derived from the name of the Yambo, which is predominantly a Luo name. That is what we are talking about, cultural exchange, word borrowing. For example, you are asked, state 3 ways in which the interaction between the Agikuyu and the Kushites affected Agikuyu in this case, or what were the results of the interaction of the Agikuyu and the Kushites? What are the cultural results? Age-set system, circumcision. Originally the Kushites are the people who practice circumcision. Age-set system was originally practiced by the age-set, but in the 19th century, virtually all Kenyan communities adopted these practices. How? Cultural exchange. Then we move on to another set altogether. We are now talking about led to increased trade in the region. That is now economic, as they exchange goods with their neighbors. So you have to check on all those. Once that is done, you now move to this famous question of now naming the communities. We begin with the Bantu. Bantu as a linguistic group, as we all know, migrated from the Congo Basin, the area between the Congo Basin and the Cameroon Islands. Bantu migrated in 4 waves out of the Congo Basin. Out of these 4 waves, only 2 waves got into Kenya. One wave got through Uganda and settled on Mount Elgon before dispersing to their present location. They became known as Western Bantu because they occupy western parts of Kenya. These are the community we call Abaluya, Abagusi, and Abakuria. Their ancestors first lived in Mount Elgon before migrating to their present homeland. And so this aspect can be tested in this manner. Name 3 communities in Kenya whose ancestors first settled in Mount Elgon. Basically, we all know we have got 4 communities that have been categorized under the Western Bantu, but I would only want to discuss 3. Those communities whose ancestors settled at Mount Elgon, because we have the Abasuba, but the Abasuba came later. These are the descendant refugees, people who are escaping a persecution in the Buganda kingdom, migrated through the lake and settled on the highlands in Lake Victoria. That is Mufangano, Rusinga, soon later spread to parts of Gwasi. And today they've been totally assimilated. But they're in this category. Unless you are asked about the Western Bantu group that did not move through Mount Elgon, then we'll talk about Abasuba. But when you are basically dealing with the group that first settled around Mount Elgon, then dispersed, making Mount Elgon their dispersal point, then let us restrict our attention to the first three. Then the next group of the Bantu migrated, passing through the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro, moved into Kenya and first settled at a place called Shungwaya on the eastern parts of Kenya. This group became known as the Eastern Bantu. While at Shungwaya, they dispersed with the incoming Kushites, the incoming Oromo. You're asked, what was the main cause of dispersion of the Eastern Bantu at Shungwaya? The attack by the incoming Oromo people made this group to disperse again in two groups. One group moved towards the coast and became known as Coastal Bantu. This group of Bantu comprises three: the Pokomo, the Taita, and the Mijikenda. Mijikenda, as we know, is a Swahili word meaning 9 clans. The 9 clans that originally lived in the fortified villages called the Kaya, and all the purpose of Kaya for protection. These are the groups, like look at the KCSE of 2022, question 18a. Name 5 groups, subgroups that makes up the Mijikenda. We have the Kauma, Chonyi, Jibana, Ribe, Kambe, Digo, we have Agiriama, etc. Then we come to the next group that out of Shungwaya moved towards the Kenyan highlands and occupied the central highlands of Kenya. They are known as the Island Bantu, or the Mount Kenya Bantu, or the Central Bantu. Remember those stroking, they can be used interchangeably. This group of Bantu includes, and they form the largest group of Bantu speakers in Kenya. These are 1, the Akamba, the Agikuyu, the Ameru, the Embu, and the Mbeere. So you have to know them in that manner. That means we have summarized the Bantu speakers. Let us come to the Nilotes. Nilotes are people who are associated with the River Nile, and we all believe they migrated from the Lower Nile Valley in South Sudan. This group is subdivided into 3 groups. River Lake Nilotes. This is a group of the Nilotes who believed that their migration was associated with moving along the lakes and rivers. The River Lake Nilotes in Kenya comprise only one community, the Luo, whose original homeland is believed to be at a place called Barel Gazelle. Or cut that long story short, you are asked about the original homeland of the Luo, simply talk about South Sudan. But as they migrated from South Sudan, this group of people moved and settled, first made their settlement in western Uganda at a place called Pabungu Pakwach. Therefore, I question that may be demanding you to name the first settlement of the Luo. We are done with that. Pabungu Pakwach. From Pabungu Pakwach, this group of people moved into Kenya in 3 distinct groups. Oral tradition points out that the migration of the Luo into Kenya was led by a Luo warrior, Osumba Muruai, by the name Ramogi Ajwang. That is why they are referred to as people of Nyikwa Ramogi Ajwang, the grandchildren of Ramogi Ajwang. So this Ramogi Ajwang was a great Luo warrior who, according to oral tradition, led their migration into Kenya. As they were coming, they came into 3 subgroups. The people of Joka Jok made the first entrance, followed by the people of Owen, Joko Owen, and finally people of Omolo, Joko Molo. And then they later spread to where they live today. Then we come to the Plain Nilotes. The reason as to why they are called Plain Nilotes, these are a group of people in this country that predominantly occupy the Kenyan plains. This group of Nilotic speakers comprise of 5 groups. You know, when we were growing up, I remember those days when we were in primary, there used to be this type of sweet at the counter in these shops called mints. We were privileged to have those during those early times. These days, I hear kids talk about Big Daddy. We were never privileged to have Big Daddy at that time. But there was this sweet called mints. We learned that these mints can make us learn the 5 groups that forms the plain nilotes. So we could just write the word mint. Mints down, where M stand for Masai, I stand for Iteso, N stand for James, T for Turkana, and S for Samburu. In this group, there are these 2 groups called the Maa speakers. Masai and Samburu are referred to as Maa speakers. Why? Because they share similar tradition. You're done. Come to the island Nilotes. These groups comprise a group of people called the Kalenjin speakers. Now, one thing I love with the Nilotes and the Kushites is because they share one physical characteristic: homogeneity. There are people who look similar in appearance. In public, you can easily tell yule ni Mjaka. You can say yule ni Masai na pengine si Masai, ni Msamburu ama ni Mturkana. You can easily say, huyo anaongea kama Mkale. But can you distinguish which type of Mkale? Mnandi, Kipsigis, Tugen, Keio? Or you can say, ona yule Oria. But can you distinguish which Kushite group does this person belongs to? Is he a Somali Borana? That homogeneity is what is lacking with the Bantu speakers. But for the Nilotes and the Kushites, their voice is called homogeneity. So let me summarize with, under the Nilotic speakers, let me summarize with the Highland Nilotes. I've said this group comprises of a group called Kalenjin speakers, where we have the Nandi, the Kipsigis, Sabaot, Keio, Tugen, Pokot, and then we have Sabaot. You're done. Let us move on to the last group, the Kushites. Oral tradition points out, and not even oral tradition, the first group of people to have migrated into Kenya were the Kushites, with the southern Kushites making their first presence into this country. Kushites are categorized into 2. The southern Kushites, who today in this country exist in terms of just remnants because of hemi-assimilation by their counterparts. The Dahalo or the Sanye. That is the only remaining group under the southern Kushites. Others proceeded to Tanganyika like the Iraqi and the Burungi. But the largest group of Kushites forms the eastern side, the eastern Kushites. This is where we have Somali, we have Borana, we have Rendile, we have Oromo, we have Burji, and then the Kabra. So I want you to look at that summary. And by the time you're done with that, you have summarized all of them. Lastly, as I wind up on question 18, now comes to the social aspects, political and economic. In the same form, we learned about political, economic, and social organization of selected communities to represent their groups. Under the River Lake Nilotes, we discussed the Luo. The Plain Nilotes, we learned about the Maasai. The Highland Nilotes, we talk about the Nandi. We come to the Kushites, we talk about Somali and Borana. We move to the Bantu. On the western side of the Bantu, we talk about the Abagusi. On the eastern Bantu, which forms the largest bulk, we have the Akamba, we have the Agikuyu, and then we have the Ameru, 3 of them. Then the coastal Bantu, we have the Mijikenda. You know, as a candidate, the council expects you and your syllabus expects you to have locked everything in terms of their political organization, social aspect, and economic activities in your brain as we prepare for this exam. Now today, I also want to make a summary and make it very simple. I will begin with the political organization. Not for any community, but political organization of the Kenyan communities in the 19th century. To bring on board all these 10 communities that we have to discuss their political organization. Let us develop a level ground of 5 points, but basically cuts across all these communities. So 1, the first political organization that cuts across all the Kenyan community. They have a decentralized system of government due to lack of a single political head. There was a lot of heavy decentralization in Africa. Only a few communities had centralized governments. In this country, it was only a subsection of the Abaluya, the Wanga, And we say the Wanga were centralized because they had elaborate structures of administration, and we could point out who was the leader. A centralized community means that at the political apex, there was one person giving political direction. And for the Wanga, we can talk about King Nabongo Mumia. And there, apart from the Wanga, these other communities, we can't point out who was their leader. They were decentralized because there was no single political head to lead the community. 2, when we say that these communities were decentralized, then at what level was this power being exercised? We come to the second most important political aspect. Clan was the basic political unit made of several related families. Clan was the basicity of political administration among the Kenyan community was at the clan level. All these communities are the clan, Anyuola, in Duluo. And when we talk about clan was therefore the basic political unit, at that point you already have 4 marks. Just talk about clan was the basic. I'm not talking about the lowest. I'm not talking about the lowest political structure here. I'm talking about what was basic. Because you'll find that those clans where clan was as well the basic and the smallest, like the Abagusi. But those communities where political administration began at the family level. So I want things that were common to all of them. Clan was the basic political unit formed by several related families. Then at point number 3, what should linger into your mind now? Then who are in charge of these clans? And therefore we move on to point number 3 and say clans were led by the council of elders, or the community was ruled by the council of elders. Stop at that point. Don't proceed further. You have locked your 6 marks. Move to point number 4. At this point, now that we have mentioned that the communities were led by clans, at least one role of these clan elders. The council of elders helped in settling disputes in the community. Help in maintaining law and order in the community. Help in making laws that governed the community. One role. If you write all of them separately, we'll only score 1s. Then finally, you are now locking your 10th point that gives you the 10th mark. They had a class of warriors who protected them against external attacks. Yeah, there to safeguard their security. They had a set system made of boys who were initiated at the same time, who became junior warriors. Age set system is both social and political. And I do not want you to mention this age set system under political, because you may lose the point, especially if you have not provided an adequate explanation that would make it political. Because age set system was political in the sense that junior warriors, those who were circumcised at the same time, joined age set and became junior warriors who defended the community. Now that is what I've talked about. They had a class of warriors who defended them against external attacks. You are done. The 6th point, if it is 12 marks, I believe a candidate must sweat also for his grade or a grade. Now move into the individual community and find out. If it is the Luo, you now had family was the lowest political unit headed by the father. The same goes to Agikuyu and Meru. If you come to the Akamba, you talk about Homestead, Musi, the lowest political structure. In the Masai, in the Nandi, in the Masai, you now talk about the existed influential office of Oloibon, who administered the land, or who advised the council of elders. The Nandi borrowed such practice, and in their case existed the Orkoyot. These were prophets, but in the 19th century, they assumed political duties. So in the Nandi, you'll say there was an influential office of Orkoyot who advised the council of elders. And you know them. Let us now come to social aspect. And social aspect I want to link with the paper 2, where we also talk about organization of the African society, the Baganda, the Shona, and the Asante. Social aspect was more or less a common thing for the the entire African people in the pre-colonial period. So even the ones that I'm going to discuss now, you can apply them in paper 2. When you're asked about social organization of any community, the other side. But here, let us talk about paper 1. That 1, they believed in one supreme God as their creator. Full stop. Do not bother to quote the vernacular name of that God. Because should you commit and give a wrong vernacular name, the entire point is cancelled. The point is already pregnant and mature for tick. Up to the point as their creator. They believed in one supreme God as their creator. Stop at that point. 2, African societies believed in the existence of ancestral spirits who mediated between people and God. They believed in the existence of ancestral spirits who mediated between people and the gods. 3, they had diviners, stroke medicine men, stroke ritual experts who treated the sick. They had diviners, stroke medicine men, stroke ritual experts. But I would prefer we go with the medicine men. Just pick one. They had medicine men who treated the sick, period. They had sacred places of worship or shrines. 4, they offered sacrifices to their gods in times of need, such as times of good fortune and times of misfortune. Full stop. They practiced polygamous marriage to strengthen social bond. Who condemns polygamy, by the way? In African traditional setup, polygamy was a very important social aspect in our life. But we have been integrated into the Western style of life, where we are told polygamy is bad on the doctrine of Christianity, while as an African would encourage you to be polygamous. Yes, polygamous. And thank me later. That's aside. The next social aspect that we'll talk about, labor, was gender role. Labor was divided according to gender, where girls took care of their house chores, while boys took care of the animals in the field, etc., etc. You are done. Economic activity, same, cuts across the entire African setup, whether in paper 1, paper 2. They practice trade with their neighbors to exchange what they produce in excess, or to exchange or to acquire what they did not produce. 2, they practiced livestock keeping and kept animals such as cattle for milk or blood or meat. They practiced crop growing and grew crops such as millet, sorghum for food. Remember, you're told to explain, so you have to elaborate. They practice hunting and gathering to supplement their diet. You have been fed too much on vegetables to a point you say, I'm no longer vegetarian. So you have to move into the bush just after the rains overnight, because it is very easy hunting. As you all know, hunting was a very important activity of early man. And after some light rains, you're able to see the footprints. So hunting and gathering to supplement their diet. They practice domestic crafts such as basketry, pottery, for domestic use or for sale. Some made those baskets for commercial purposes. Some made them just for their own personal use. Elaborate. Pick on one. In the 19th century, while we all know iron working was a reserve of the Bantu community, but in the 19th century, every community had learned the knowledge of iron working. And so we'll talk about they practiced iron working and made iron implements or tools for domestic use or for sale. There are those who just specialize as blacksmiths, producing those iron implements to sell. Those who lived along river valleys practiced fishing to obtain fish for food or for sale. There are those that took this economic activity for commercial purposes are those people who just went to the river or lake. It should not believe that fishing was a reserve of the Luo. Who said so? Any community that lived in an environment naturally endowed with water bodies containing fish resources practiced fishing. And that now comes to a common question in section A, where you are put to task to mention the main economic activity of a given community. I want to give 3 examples. 1, you're asked about what was the main economic activity of the Luo, the main economic activity of the Akamba, and then the main economic activity of the Plain Islands like Maasai or the Kushites. Let me start with the Luo. Majority of students, when asked about the main economic activity of the Luo, and I'm very sure if that is in the KCSE of 2025, 80% of students from Luo Nyanza will miss that, because they believe that whenever you see a lake, you see fishing, the first thing. And they only believe that that was the main thing that the Luo people were doing. The main economic activity of the Luo was livestock keeping. Because you cannot tell me that people were living as far as Kabondo, far from the lake, who were practicing fishing. Where? So they would put water in a basin. So Babotieno puts water in a basin and invite Otieno, let us come and pull fish out of the basin. Those who lived as far as Uko, Kajulu, Ndani, towards Guba, very far from the lake, far up to Asumbi, very far from the lake, where were they practicing fishing? They pour water in a basin and catch fish. Fishing was only for those who live around lakes and rivers. But we can agree that in every household, you will find ducklings, you will find chickens, you will find goats, you will find cows, and even to date in our homes. It is you are likely to find those things. Is there a home where you can't find a chicken? So that means when you talk about main economic activity of a given community, think of the activity that was virtually done by every household in that community. And for the Luo, it was livestock keeping. Come to the Akamba also brings confusion, because we believe that in the long distance trade, among the active participants in Kenya were the Akamba people. And candidates, when they are asked about the main economic activity of the Akamba, they think about trade. So you want to tell me that everyone was practicing trade? So Mama Mtola has gone to the market and has bought some tomatoes and is now inviting his siblings. Oh, come buy tomato. Oh, my kids, come buy tomato. Not everyone practiced trade in the Kambaland. But Akamba were naturally conditioned by the environment to adopt livestock keeping. While we all know that the Bantu speakers practiced crop farming as their main economic activity. Virtually all the Bantus practiced crop farming as their main economic activity. But for the Akamba, it was different. Kambaland is extremely dry. Travel through Kambaland, you will barely see anything green, except for these parts of Machakos areas around Yatta Plateau. But move deep into Makueni, those sides are extremely dry. And therefore, that environment could not support crop growing. They had to adopt livestock keeping for them to survive. So they became pastoralists. Trade was just a way of supplementing their livelihood. All of the Nilotes and the Kushites were livestock keepers. Let me cut the long story short. At this moment, I think I've exhausted number 18 in this podcast. And for the candidates who had an opportunity to watch this, feel free. You can get this video in my YouTube channel. Go to YouTube channel, search Galacha, Kosovo Galacha 254. You will find several podcast posts there, preparing candidates for this year's KCSE. You can also do the same in my TikTok account, search Kosovo 254. You'll find this podcast there, as well as my Facebook page, Currents. It is basically educational page there. And you'll find I've posted a lot of educational materials. That is what I do in these social media platforms. Majorly I post and help preparing the sons and daughters of this great nation, because you are the future generation. And knowledge is power, like Nelson Mandela puts it. The only tool necessary in the third world country to fight poverty is education. Do not believe there is this fallacy, this myth and misconception that people can succeed without education. Do not use just a single case of some people who got lucky in life without education and became so successful, and they are, showing how much money they have and all that. Well, you can only count for me a few of those people who have excelled in this life minus education. But I can tell you can go to your village and count 100 people doing quite well because of education. So at this point, and in this country, there is nothing that we can still equate with education. So let us not buy to this fallacy that is being spread by some cocoon, a group of people who have lost direction in life, and they are therefore poisoning the minds of young people. Education will take you places. So believe in education. Of course, we were born with different luck. And like Waswahili say, bahati ya mwenzie usilale mlango wazi. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm very grateful. In the afternoon, I'll be taking you through paper 2, and we shall be looking at world wars. Something that happened a long time ago, right from 1914, moving to 1918, World War I. A camp of the Allies versus the Central Powers, and in the post-war period, factors hitting, tension brewing, things like the violation of the Versailles Treaty, the appeasement policy adopted by France and Britain in dealing with the much aggressive Adolf Hitler of Germany because they did not have enough courage to handle Hitler, like what is happening right now. The world is treating aggressors like Putin, Vladimir. These are the things that are brewing tension. So we shall be looking at how that culminated into World War II, fought between 1939 to 1945. Basically, in these two areas, I want you to be able to explain vividly, well, factors, reasons for the outbreak of those two wars. And then under international relations, we shall connect with Cold War. Hostility erupting after the end of World War II between the two leading superpowers, the USSR, that is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, or simply cut the long story short, the Soviet Union and the United States of America and allies. So that is what we shall be doing in the afternoon. Nevertheless, I'm grateful for having this opportunity to be with you people. I wish you success in advance, and may you pass with flying colors. May God bless you. Thank you.